Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of League Weekly ReCoDeD. As you might know or recognize, especially if you're watching the live stream, the production continues to go downhill. We started about 23 minutes later than we were supposed to, and the show note topic thing is just kind of a bunch of random jumble. But it's going to be a great show, and you should all stick around. And let me go ahead and introduce my co-hosts here, because they are the reason that this is going to be a great show. There's so much to talk about. Starting off with, in Los Angeles, California, we have Emily Rand. How's it going, Emily?
Hello. I'm doing pretty well, actually. Organizing all of my different freelance stuff, so it's really cool.
Yeah, so...
I have a lot of stuff coming out, so that's like, I'm just excited to be working again, because I don't like not working.
Yeah. You had like a whole week off.
Not even for the money. Like, I just don't know what to do with myself. I'm like, I want to do things. So
you had like the whole week off.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with weeks off.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Well,
like,
presumably you were spending that week off trying to find work.
Yeah, I was like contacting people, and I still went to LCS to gather interviews and stuff like that before I knew where they were going. So this week you'll see all of the homes I found for them and other articles.
Nice.
So,
and you've announced...
I think that,
go ahead.
Yeah, the two that have been announced are InVen Global and Slingshot. So
nice. Well, congratulations on the new work. Also in Shanghai, Kelsey Moser, who is now, I think, running ESPN Esports. That's what I saw, right? That's what you announced?
I'm effectively running the power rankings.
Oh, really? Are you running them?
If you just tell Fian on Fire no, he's like, okay.
Well, what about the other folks
impressive.
at ESPN?
I mean, they have good conversations and stuff. So you keep having good conversations. And if you're really, really stubborn, because no one wants to talk about power rankings for 3 hours. No.
So, like, wait, on a ranking, because you were on this with me, on a ranking from, like, where does it rank compared to the LOL Esports power ranking conversations? Because some of those were, like, huge, massive fights where I would just stand back and be like, holy crap, people are mad.
No, I mean, it's actually really calm. Most people on it are, I think everyone on it is rational. So, and we'll have good, like, arguments. So I think it's fine, and it's usually people are pretty agreeable. The only reason I said that is because I'm always the biggest asshole. So if you're the biggest asshole, you can run anything. It's good.
That's how I ran Yahoo Esports.
Yeah.
Kelsey, do you have other stuff? So obviously you're involved. Okay, so it's not just that you are providing input, like you are actually, you have kind of like a freelance position doing the power rankings. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, a freelance position. I'm at least going to be like, ESPN weirdly wanted LPL content, so that was cool. Okay. And
who would want that?
Yeah. It's okay. They'll learn their lesson.
Probably have another place that I'm going to put stuff. So
nice.
It's good.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Mark, and also doing random videos, but that's about it. Yeah.
Mark, what are you doing right now? What's happening?
I'm just readjusting on the couch.
Okay. And how's the production value?
That's
just
my
plummets.
week right there.
Yeah. Just you spent the past 7 days readjusting on the couch.
It's been a rough 7 days, guys.
Yeah.
Not much. I'm doing stuff with Scarlett's house, so that's why I'm here today, shooting some stuff. And yeah, everything else is the same. I got sunburned. It's kind of a bummer.
It is a bummer. You went outside.
Yeah, we shot outside. Now I'm burned.
Yeah. Did you get?
Was
that today?
Sunscreen?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm already like beet red from it. It's been like 3 hours since I was outside.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm excited to see what it is. Is it like whenever you and Josh Kim used to do those weird videos? Or is it like actually something real?
You talking about my sunburn?
No, the video, the content.
No, it's like real shit.
Okay. Okay.
That people will probably want to watch.
Probably. All right. Well, I'm excited to see it because I'll probably want to watch it too. As for me, I continue to exist, and that's my life right now. It's very exciting, and Yeah, Ovally was at LCS this past weekend, so I had the weekend off. Though I did show up for a little bit to help get her set up and do some stuff. So you'll see interviews coming from Ovally this weekend at the State League YouTube channel. Anyway, we've been talking for far too long. Let's get into the show. And I'm just going to randomly pick one of these topics to start off with. And
speaking of which, why is the topics list look so ugly? You can format that better.
Who, me?
Yeah, you just...
I never made this topics list. You're making fun of Emily right now. She was the one that put this whole thing together.
No, I mean, like, on the screen right now. I don't think she did that. You just have to enter at the end of each topic. And
yeah, but how do I don't know how to do line breaks.
You press enter.
No, I mean, I tried that in XSplit and it doesn't work. Have you tried to do that?
Oh, you're using XSplit. You can try... Do you have to use, like, the actual code, like, /n? What is it, \n or /n? For
it's like shift enter, but that doesn't work either.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could just make like a ton of them, but I don't know.
No, that sounds too complicated.
All right, we're starting off with the fabled 10-man roster. Emily Rand's topic. So you're starting us off on the show today, Emily.
Yeah. So basically, I think the examples that most people will point to from North America, obviously Team Liquid came out and said with their acquisition of Nori, like that was kind of their headlining acquisition, but a few other players we saw Slushi and Conquan playing. A lot of teams are going to, and we'd previously touched upon this with TSM, a lot of teams are going towards picking up subs to build out a 10-man roster. So I wanted to reopen this discussion because 10-man rosters are something that I've personally been a little shaky on, even though I've seen the best iteration of like substitutions, and that's from SKT. And I know like SKT is kind of the team that everyone loves to cite, where when people started picking up subs and started rotating through them after the sister teams condensed in Korea and SKT kept swapping between EasyHoon and Faker, everyone was like, oh, we're going to do that because it worked for them. And that's kind of still the example that I feel like people reach out and hold up as like, this actually works. Look at SKT in 2015. Look at SKT now with just last night they had the Huni and Peanut group and then the Blank Untara group. But that is, in my opinion, one outlier to 10-man rosters actually working. So I guess, what do we think of them? What do we think of all of these substitutions that are going on in the LCS? Do we think that teams are actually going to use these players? Or are they just bringing them on as another method of preparing for franchising and having an academy team? How do players even feel like that, feel about it? Because, I don't know, if I were a player, I'd want to know that I was starting. And I think only SK Telecom and a few other teams can get away with benching players for, swapping out lines and stuff.
So
I would say...
My question... Oh, sorry. I just wanted to go all the way back to the top where we're talking about SKT. It's like, how much can we even call SKT's 10-man rostering a success? I think the one mechanism that you can definitely say is kind of a success is like the swapping out mechanism. But often there's always like a feeling that when they have subs and starters, there's one player who just feels worse for the team. And the team just seems to play way better with the other iteration. Like obviously right now the big example is Blank Peanut. Right, where the team just plays better with Blank at the moment. So in that regard, I kind of feel like it's not even, SKT is not even the pinnacle of success that a 10-man roster wants to achieve. Because I think the only thing SKT's 10-man roster really, really does well is the refresher aspect, which is everyone is kind of down after a loss. You swap out a player, something's changed. Yeah, all right, we're here. We're ready to win the next game. And I think that that's the only aspect that's really, really definitively a success for SKT. So I'm still kind of, I'm calling SKT's 10-man roster hugely amazing.
The only addendum... Oh, go, Mark.
Oh, no, you can go.
Oh, no, I was going to say the only addendum to that I'd have is we have I think the reason why people hold up SKT as a success, because I actually agree with you. I think in certain, like right now, it's obvious to me that Blank is the better jungler for SKT. But in terms of citing specific reasons why SKT swap players, I wanted to add that another thing that I think they have done pretty well is adjust to meta by swapping players. So like, I know people were super mad about Faker being subbed out for EasyHoon, and then he came out in 2016 and had this like magnificent Azir that had yet to be seen because they kept swapping in EasyHoon to play that champion. But I do think that's another way that rosters can be used. But even then, there's always a better 5-man iteration for a specific meta or the champions that they want to play.
And I don't even know. I kind of feel like to an extent SKT was just sort of playing poorly. That's why I don't even know if it was meta. It was like weird. Like Faker was just kind of playing worse. I don't know. Kind of like he is. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that, like
Sky, no.
any time that you have like a 10-man roster, there's like two things people want to do. They want to like develop players and then like have strategic depth or something like that. And to the point that like usually the strategic depth you're adding doesn't benefit enough to offset the chemistry that the best version of your 5-man roster has. The example with the EasyHoon one did seem like the strategic value was maybe worth, because Faker wasn't like absolutely smashing people at that time frame, and it made it look better than it would if like that wasn't an instance where Faker was like full god mode. So I kind of agree that they're the best example of it working, and the fact that we've been talking about this shows that it's not like a super compelling like thing to go for, right? The fact that like our shining example is one that we have to like talk in and out about the benefits of.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this last week, I think, and weren't we speculating that part of this might be because of the franchise thing? Like, the question is, would you have all these 10-man rosters popping up if the format for LCS and the system of it wasn't changing next year?
I think that might be part of it. I think a lot of it is just more money, because like LPL and LCK teams were doing this just when there was more money, and I think LCS teams like to copy trendy things, as we also said last year, and I think that was even your point. But the other aspect of it is, I think like fatigue is a consideration because there are more games.
Yeah.
But one thing also that I remember when G2 brought on Expect, and originally it was like Kikis was agreeing to share the roster with Expect, but then he came back and he was saying things like, I was surprised by how much more I felt like I was falling behind because I didn't get as many practice games. I didn't get as many scrims. I didn't get as many matches in general, and that's why he decided to leave G2. So I thought that was an interesting thing to add to the question of like, because I haven't heard that particular piece of information from a lot of different places.
I know Golden Glue said the same thing with like Link, was like when they were swapping playing time, it just felt like both of them were behind the curve and falling further because they were splitting time a little bit earlier on in the season before TL completely moved away from the idea of Link.
Yeah, I was going to say I've interviewed a couple of players that have split positions, and like I had an interview that came out with Inori today actually, about even though how he really loved Phoenix One and he kind of made a name for himself in Phoenix One. Phoenix One was like this family to him. Being substituted in and out with Meteos was actually like really detrimental to his confidence, and he didn't really like the way he was performing on stage because, you know, less practice time meant that he wasn't as confident going into games, and it kind of like, you know, snowballed where he just wasn't as confident of a player, and it obviously affected his performance. I think, I mean, it's similar to like, I don't know, I know people hate traditional sports analogies, but like people always say that if you don't know who your quarterback is going to be, it's always a bad thing because it means you're swapping through having them have like so many reps in practice instead of having one person that you can rely on get all the reps in practice and be in a lot better shape to play on game day. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of 10-man rosters, I guess, but I think fatigue is a really good point, and I also think that like when metas shift, it's good to have players that you can substitute in if a player is struggling really, really, really badly. Like, for example, I do think, even though people will probably disagree with me on this, I do think substituting blank in for Bengi last year, when Bengi was really struggling, like they had him on Udyr, and I think he played Rumble, and it was bad. The only champion he looked any way competent on was Elise. And even though blank had very visible mistakes, I actually agreed with the substitution because the team played better when blank was in, because his champion pool and his playstyle suited the meta a lot better than Bengi's.
Yeah, the one thing that we haven't really touched on that I've had owners tell me is that being in a position to having somebody that is at any given point in time ready to step in for your role is a great way of keeping players motivated. Because, you know, like there's often times where players might get distracted because they start dating someone, or they just get lazy, or they start playing World of Warcraft.
Are you talking about Double Lift?
I'm talking about like half of the LCS throughout its history. You know, not to start a crumbs conversation type here, but it is very easy for players to get burned out or distracted, and having somebody that is like biting at their heels to try and get in is a pretty good way of keeping them ready. And I do agree. I generally think that like the 10-man roster thing, like rarely will we see it be played. Like it's very hard to imagine any of these teams even having a point in time where like throughout the split they play every single player. You know what I mean? Like how many of these 10-man rosters are actually going to see all 10 players get played at some point in time during a split? I would be surprised if it's one of them. Maybe we'll see something. I don't know. But
maybe TL.
Maybe. Mark?
They've used everyone so far, right?
Have they?
They've used 8 players, yeah.
Oh yeah, but they don't have the full 10-man, right?
They don't. As far as I know, they don't have a substitute for Piglet or Lorlo, right?
Yeah, those are the two that haven't been swapped out.
I mean,
yet.
it's the year of Lorlo, so you probably wouldn't get even a substitute for him. But
it'd be a strong second half of the year, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I will just be surprised if we see all 10 go in. Maybe Team Liquid because they're crazy and zany, but I just doubt it.
Yeah, usually it's the bottom teams that are swapping players a lot more because they're just like desperate to find something. At least this is what I see in LPL a lot, where it's like, oh, this team has 4 different 80 carries throughout the course of the split, and they're all getting played, and it's not really changing anything because you don't know how to use bounce waves when you do lane swaps. Yeah, okay, excellent, let's move on.
Yeah, same problem in NA, where like it's the bottom teams, like, let's try all tech for LOD. That'll fix our problems, where like we play only around someday. It's like, what? How's that fix your problem?
So is the general feeling here that 10-man rosters are more about PR and marketing and also just about like motivation than it is actually a real thing where you start to see like, yeah, we actually have 10 players that can sub it at any given point in time?
I think I wouldn't say it's like all for PR and marketing. I think like the idea of, especially next split, like we said, you will need 10 players most likely. Like if you have some signed, it just makes it easier in the future, especially if they're half decent players that you've signed. And then I think like in terms of strategic value, there's usually not much, because the reason subs are used in traditional sports is because people get fucking tired during the game. And that doesn't happen in esports. So you don't need to sub someone out. Whereas like you need to sub people out at almost every position in every sport, minus like a goalie or quarterback. So I don't think you'll see that in sports where you're going to see like very heavy roster rotations, because ideally your 5 best players are your 5 best players. Like basketball, they would never come out of the game if they didn't get tired.
I think I mean the other aspect is the G2 vacation method, where they bring in some subs so that their current players can have a longer vacation. One thing I would be interested to see more of these subs move in-house, because even if they aren't getting like scrim and practice time, like the benefit of the team environment and that kind of rigor, if they're really young and they've never been part of a team, like seeing how scrims work, all these sorts of things could theoretically be beneficial. So that's something that I think might be interesting if it happens. We're not really sure.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits, but not all of them tie into like mid-series substitution or like today we're using a different roster.
Good news. as we move on to the next topic, I have figured out, based on Benson's help, how to do the line break for the topics.
Ooh, how'd you do that?
It's a bracket, or not bracket, like the less than, BR, greater than sign. I forget what those things are called. Carrots? Are they carrots? Carrots, I think, is when it's going up. Emily, Kelsey, what are these things?
I mean, I knew what you said when you said less than, greater than sign.
Yeah, but those.
Where
have
is
like
my snake topic, Travis? I'm very upset about this.
Oh,
Wait, did you just delete it?
We had to cut a topic. I'm just
I
kidding.
mean, this one you could connect broadly, you know, too, because there are a lot of really bad teams. There are a lot of teams that cut their coaching staff, or maybe just Fnatic.
Try to tie it into my MVP one.
I'm just kidding. I just forgot to put it in there.
Okay. I see how it is.
All right. Next up, we have hitting the horrible lows of Snake Esports with Kelsey.
It's convenient.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was interesting because I felt like last week Snake Esports went on an upswing when they fired their coaching staff, which is something that Fnatic have done in the past, and then they had like a much more long-lasting uptick where they did really well for the rest of the split, and now people still meme Nico the Pico, and I feel like the best thing for a player is to be on a team with Nico the Pico, because if you go to the post-match threads for Ninjas in Pajamas, they'll always just blame Nico the Pico, no matter how bad the players play. So you should always just look to join a team with Nico. I think that was interesting, but this split, it was like really just terrible. I don't know. I've never seen... Okay, I've seen teams this bad, maybe, but it was just... Every item was like intentionally built incorrectly. Like, I felt like they were doing this on purpose to try to goad each other in. We had like the Athenes, Zach build. We had
Sorry.
They were just strictly trolling.
I saw like some of this, and it was bad. Yeah.
It was really terrible. And then the second game, they picked like all champions, and then it actually made sense to build Thunderlords on these champions, but all of them were Thunderlords anyway. So it was just like, it was like this was intentional as well. So and then in the IMA series, they took a 15-minute inhibitor and lost the game. It was good. It was beautiful. I'm impressed by how poorly Snake Esports are playing, and I think that you can actually look at this team and you have to start, like, my question is with this topic is, like, how do you tell when a team is just trolling, when they've stopped caring, when there's like, when do you levy this kind of criticism? When do you start to say this? Because you can't definitively prove that that's what they're doing, but it feels like they've just already FF'd their season, and that's it.
That's hard, because I actually like all of the... So immediately there's this team that came to mind. I have another example too from NA, but there is this team from Brazil. It was actually Big Gods who are now in NA Challenger, but they were fined, I want to say, negative 22 points, because they go by a point system, before the season even started, for failing to submit their roster. And you could still tell that they were trying. And I was actually impressed by the fact that they were, because I feel like if a team had any excuse to troll away the season, like, you are not getting anywhere with negative 22 points before the season even starts. Even Envy last split, they had that horrible series with CLG that lasted, like, every game was an hour. And it was the last game of the regular season, the last series of the regular season. And I just remember waiting for interviews, and I was like, when is the series going to end? This is so bad. Why am I still watching this? But even then, like, Envy did not have they were already in relegations. They didn't have a reason to keep playing, and they stuck it out, and they tried their hardest to win. So I'm really actually scratching my head trying to think of a team that I could look at, even in like super dire circumstances, like
There was a team way back when in one of the earlier LCS splits where they were definitely going
Team Dark.
What's that?
Oh yeah, there was Team Dark. I totally forgot about Team Dark. Yeah.
There was one in NA that was
team.
basically trolling in the last weekend, I think, where they picked, ridiculous comp.
TSM picked Teemo because there were enough Twitter votes or something that one time, right?
Yes.
They still tried to win that game. They just followed through on like a troll thing.
But there was a team that did that one time where they just didn't even care. So I don't know. I'm trying to remember, but
yeah,
you can kind of tell. I mean, you can usually tell by the picks. I feel like when they're just doing shit that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah, Team Dark picked all Cloud Templar picks.
Like, theoretically, you can say the Lissandra top, but I think they were doing that more as like a throwback Fiora counter. So there was like still kind of some logic. I don't know. It was weird. It's weird. Snake's players have always been weird. I feel like it's just a mistake generally to have Flandra, SFM, Zatai, OQ, and Crystal all on the same team. Like, I have no idea why you would do that. So
other than like the Zac build, was anything else like stand out? Like, what?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly. Like, the Kog'Maw thing was really, really bizarre because it was like second item Trinity Force and they had 0 damage on their comp. There was, it was like there was something really obvious that Flandra did, but it was like SFM always has really terrible builds. I think I'm guessing like more people are playing the Warrior quirky, so it isn't that bad, but it's like, I don't know. It was more in they just aren't even putting an effort forward, right? They're all just like going super weirdly ham. They're doing invades that make 0 sense, and I just don't understand like what they're doing. It's especially weird because the whole thing feels really theatrical, because when they beat WE, which everyone is just like, yes, but Snake beat WE, all this other stuff, their manager made this like really impassioned speech, and if you know anything about Zou, this guy is like a really theatrical guy. And he'll
theatrical is such a good word.
He goes out of his way to just like make really, really like, we will, be back. We will redeem ourselves.
He likes coaching when the camera's on him, right?
Yeah, kind of that situation.
Like
and it was just
Yamato cannon kind of deal.
So it just feels really, really weird and showy, and it almost has this hint of the really panic Reddit comments that are like, oh, franchising will make teams like just do this sort of weird shit and all this other stuff and not care as much as long as they have their spot. And it felt weirdly like that, because I feel like that's something that could theoretically happen with some of the Chinese teams. I don't think it will be an NA thing, but like China is just so weird. It's so weird. So, I don't know.
So, we don't really have a conclusive answer on when you can tell when people are just trolling.
Well, I think the hard thing to tell is in competitive.
Yeah.
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 Because, like, everyone's seen those kind of scrims, I think, where, like, people just, like, they basically just die once and they run up and down the lanes dying over and over and, like, going really aggro. And that's, like, technically trolling, but, like, you can't tell because, as far as you know, their decision-making just sucks. And so, like, maybe a lot of teams play like that. And, like, the actual competitive scene, you wouldn't go so far as to call it trolling the way you see trolling in solo queue, but it's, like, the competitive equivalent of trolling.
Yeah. The other aspect of it is, like, I think that this has always been kind of a China thing, because when they had a really, really crummy playoffs format, like, people were using the term Oscar night and stuff like this. So, when the teams were, like, intentionally, but you couldn't prove that they were intentionally throwing matches, but it was really obvious based on picks and the fact that they didn't take dragons for 30 minutes and they were playing their top laner mid and all this other stuff, that it was really obvious that they were trying to lose the game. Like, it was really, but you couldn't prove it, so there was no fine or anything levied like this, but it was like, and then there was the incentive to not face EDG in that side of the bracket, so that's why they wanted to lose. So I think that's there's always just like this feeling in China that there's something weird like that happening, but I don't know.
Sounds like China. Okay, next topic.
Yeah.
We're talking about is it time to accept Immortals as NA's lords and saviors? This is Mark Zimmerman's.
Yeah, so obviously I think it was last week we did the show and we were all talking about the 5-1 teams that we believe in. We said probably CLG, definitely not to Dignitas, and probably not to Immortals, if I remember.
And I think we said
correctly.
like this weekend would be the weekend to find out, right?
Right, and Immortals went 2-0 convincingly enough that they are in record the number 1 team, and I think for a lot of people they would say the best team in the NALCS. Now, I want to know if Emily and Kelsey still feel that way, and if it is something that will sustain throughout the season.
What about me?
Oh, do you have opinions about gameplay?
Continue on.
Because I would have the stance right now that I actually do think they are the best team in North America in terms of gameplay, but I'm not convinced it'll stay that way. But for now, I'm enjoying the fact that they have a way that they play, and it's good.
Yeah, but if you talk to every member of TSM, they've all gone on the record saying that they're trying to learn for Worlds, so they might be the best team. They're just not trying to win.
Yeah, so they picked Lee Sin 10 times, yeah. Definitely trying.
I mean, if you're trying to win Worlds, then you should be more critical of your mistakes in game, because you're not going to get away with them against international teams. But
are you suggesting they're not being critical of their own mistakes in games?
No, I mean, like, you're saying that, yeah, I had presumed, maybe you were not implying this, but you were saying that they were, like, testing stuff out, or
they've said that specifically.
Prepare for Worlds. Right, so
and we talked about this last week.
But if you're preparing for Worlds, then you should probably be a lot harsher on those mistakes and try to, like, fix them.
But I don't understand. Oh, are you saying, like, they are not learning from their mistakes in time?
Oh, no, I was just throwing out an offhanded comment that I don't agree with that approach. I think that if you're aiming to do well in an international competition, you should be more critical and aim to play better from the get-go.
Well, I think that it's my understanding from them, not to go too off topic, is that
no, we're already way off topic, so you may as
well.
We're
not way off topic. We're talking about who's the best team in the NALCS. I don't know if it's TSM.
You guys are talking about TSM's practice methodology.
I don't know. It's not their practice methodology. It's their approach to the LCS. Because one could argue, a crazy TSM fan, not myself, would argue that you can look at all the interviews that TSM have been doing, and they're saying that they are confident that they could go undefeated if they just tried like 1 or 2 strategies and outplayed people with those 1 or 2 strategies, but that they'd rather try to learn unique things and put Bjergsen on Galio for better or worse or whatever, so that they have a more diversified resume when it comes to facing off against some of these international teams.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were implying at all.
No, that's...
So I took your comment incorrectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that I don't even necessarily buy that after the last weekend or 2 of play, where, yes, Bjergsen's playing a little bit different things because he's Bjergsen and he's really good and can actually play different things. But in the meantime, you're sticking Biofrost, Sven, and Hans are on comfort champions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't buy that shit at all, because it's like, oh yeah, he can play League, great, you've played it 10 times. You can play Thresh, you can play Ashe. They're not really experimenting that much.
Sure. Okay, so the question is okay, if you dismiss TSM, is Immortals the best team?
Is Immortals
currently the best team, and then do you expect it to continue?
Do I think Immortals is currently the best team? Yes. After this weekend, yes, I would say that. I think, do I have confidence in them to keep it up? It's really funny talking to Immortals players, actually, because they themselves, I'll be like, how are you guys feeling? They were like, I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling normal. Oh, you guys are the top team. Yeah, I don't really know how that's happening. It's just okay.
Yeah.
Cobelter had an interview, and they're like, how important is Smithy versus Coach Song? Who's really led the team in terms of getting better as a team? And he's like, it's hard to know who to give credit to.
So I'm not and I'm in no way throwing shade, because if you can perform at your best on stage, and even if you don't know how that's happening, that's always better than performing super well in scrims and performing poorly on stage, right? So, like, I do think that right now they're the best team in NA. I think, if anything, this past weekend made me less confident in all three of the teams that are at the top. So TSM, CLG, and, well, Immortals, I'm like at about the same, right? Because I was iffy on them last week. So more iffy on CLG. I think the mid-season, like the next coming weeks.
Is this when Dardoch goes to berserk and the team falls apart?
No, I mean, I think they're like I don't know, just talking to them, they're very focused and they really, really want to go to Worlds.
Yeah,
and
I
that
mean,
is
Dardoch really more than anyone wants to go to Worlds. I don't know, like, I mean, I'm just kind of teasing, but like, I have been waiting for the breaking point for CLG, no pun intended, like, ever since Dardoch joined the team, because while he is my favorite character in Breaking Point, and I like Dardoch a lot, I know that, you know, you can look at the past 2 times he's joined a team, things seem great until they are a disaster. And so I don't know if when they start losing and like they're looking worse than Immortals and all that stuff, things are going to go bad.
I mean, that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that, like, even in their wins, they keep a lot of the players are like, you know, we keep making these same mistakes, and that's really what we have to work on. And so I think for them, it's how long does that process take? And right now it's not, and I mean, I guess this is kind of unfair to say, but like, I don't think it's moving as quickly as they would like. So for CLG, it's going to be how long does it take them to fix those mistakes, which they're already acutely aware of. For Immortals, it's going to be, I mean, I don't know. Some of their games are really weird this past weekend, too. Like, their CLG series was good. Their Dignitas series, there was that game where Shrimp gave double buff up at, like, what? Like, super early up in top lane. And it was just, like, that game was over at, like, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, like, the Dignitas series was weird because, like, they were kind of winning game 1 before they went too hard, and then game 2 and 3 they just absolutely obliterated them with, like, the first time just ignoring the top side while Shrimp and Someday couldn't kill Flame, and then the second time they just destroyed Flame. So I don't know.
Yeah, and then TSM, as we alluded to, it's going to be about pushing them more out of their comfort zone, which is, I mean, one of my topics coming up is the drafting against TSM, but yeah.
So Emily, you think right now? Sorry, really quickly, Kelsey. Emily, you think right now that Immortals is the best, but you do not necessarily think they are going to retain that title?
Yes.
Okay. Kelsey.
I was just gonna say that I think that based on this week, I felt like Immortals played really surprisingly well in terms of understanding how to keep pressure in multiple lanes, reacting to CLG's, like, admittedly abysmal Tahm Kench collapses and things like this. So I think that Immortals looked like, I preferred watching the Immortals CLG series to, like, any of the EU series that were kind of hyped this week. So for that reason, I felt like Immortals looked really, really good. And again, I'm not really sure, because it does feel like if they aren't able to identify what they're doing, though of course this could all be an elaborate troll, and I feel like teams should do this more in interviews where they're like, yeah, we don't know why we're winning, because they just don't want to tell you why they're winning. I feel like, you know, that could be more fun. Like, I actually do know a team that I'm not going to say which team it was, but I do know a team that intentionally misled, like, press as to who the shot caller was, because they didn't want enemy teams to use that information to, like, focus that player or something in game or something like this. So I don't know. I think that could be an interesting element. I don't think it's happening necessarily, but
I mean,
Yeah.
Great.
I could believe it a little bit where like they intentionally try not to say as much because like TSM's like, oh yeah, we're doing this stuff. We're trying to work on different comps, and CLG's like, oh, our split pushing's bad. We got to really work on our Fiora split pushing, and like everyone's just kind of like talks about what they think went right or wrong, and Immortals is just like, it's us.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if I have enough confidence in Immortals to pull something like that off, you know? Like, I've never thought of Xmithy as, like, this genius mastermind who's going to, like, mislead and every...
Who knows? Why haven't we heard more about Song? I feel like for a coach coming in and leading a team from 7th place to 1st place, why haven't we heard more about this guy? Like, I haven't heard shit about him on
I mean, how
feel
much are
like
people asking about him and bringing him up, right?
I
Like,
feel
they're
like for
starting
this
to do more.
strategy to be effective, though, you can't tell your CEO, because I feel like Noah Winston will use it as a platform of some kind to be like, yes, our team is winning for this reason. No, it's a little Noah Winston joke. Anyway.
Okay, so Kelsey, do you think Immortals is the best right now?
Yeah. I think they're the best team in NA right now.
Do you think they will be by the end of the split?
I mean, it's just so hard knowing that, like, Immortals as an organization have kind of let multiple strong rosters fall to the wayside because they couldn't adapt to a meta or they couldn't figure something else out. And though they looked better strategically right now, and they have a new coaching staff and everything else, it's just really hard to give them that faith, I guess.
So you don't think that they will remain number one this split?
I just say that I don't have confidence that they will. I think that...
So then you do. It's a very binary question, Kelsey. Do you think they will continue to be number one in this split?
Binary question. No.
Okay,
How's that?
that's all I needed. For me,
Yeah.
I don't know if Immortals is the best right now because I'm not good enough at this game. But I don't think they will be best by the end of the split because I think you will see one of the classics suddenly step up, which is always the case in North America.
That's what I was going to say. Is it feels less like Immortals has this history of flopping because that was pretty much the Huni, Reignover, Dylan Falco, Pobelter, like that whole team twice. And then the next time that we saw a roster that was completely different was the one that, you know, had Dardoch on it and exploded.
But
It seemed like,
I do
teams
feel
only
like...
existed for a year and a half, so...
yeah, I feel like I would
like-
draw more on other teams' success history of CLG,
Sure.
C9 / TSM than I would Immortals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a valid point. I just do feel like a lot of times it is the org not pressuring change and things like this when you have situations like that. So I really need to stop saying things like this.
It's okay. I know. I
Yeah,
saw you
keep
tweeted
going.
a counter.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on from Immortals, where we all think that they're the best for the most part, and don't think that they will be by the end of the split. We now have drafting with confidence or hubris.
Yes.
So Emily Rand.
Yes. So something
Featuring
that
TSM Svenskeren.
featuring TSM Svenskeren, yes. And the reason why it's featuring TSM Svenskeren is because one of the common criticisms of teams that have been going up against TSM is that they do not ban his Lee Sin. And it's obviously a comfort pick for him. It's one of these champions he kind of defaults to a lot of the time. And Lee Sin is generally strong right now, but, you know, obviously if it's not banned, they keep picking it because it works and they're able to win and he's able to do a lot more for the team on that champion. So I guess I just wanted to talk about general approaches to drafting, and obviously I feel like there's always this push and pull between you have to ban out OPs versus you have to ban out comfort picks. And with the Lee Sin, it's a lot different than a lot other times we've brought this up. Like I know I brought up not banning certain champions against Gigabyte Marines, which was something to me that was really obvious, and those champions kind of stood out. But Lee Sin is a very common champion that you don't necessarily need to ban in all situations. So I guess I just wanted to talk about a general draft approach. Do we agree with teams leaving the Lee Sin up? Do we think it should be banned? I'm on the side that you should just ban it to get him off that champion. I don't think it's a waste of a ban at all. But how do you guys feel?
How are you going to win Worlds if you can't beat Svenskaren's Lee Sin?
Wow.
How are you going to get to Worlds?
I mean, that's the. I mean,
That's actually a good question.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it too. Is that I see a lot of people do these criticisms, like, and it's always like, stop letting Clearlove play Lee Sin is the Chinese example. It's the complete opposite, obviously. It's like, it's like, if Clearlove can't play Lee Sin, what is he gonna do? And then G2 said it when they played Fnatic, after they played Fnatic. Fnatic is literally the only team that does this Shen Kennen thing. Why would we ban it when they're the only team that does it, and we should just know how to play it? We should just know how to deal with it, is kind of the response. It's like, if it's a very specific thing to this team, and you can understand the theory behind it, you should be able to play against it if it's not like just an OP champion or something like this.
I don't know. I feel like if there's something that a team does specifically, I would ban that and force them to play the stuff I'm used to beating. But I think it depends on the champions. Like the Svenskeren example is one that I think you should ban, just because there's obviously other things in the meta he can play. Lee Sin is still meta though, and then he looks so much worse on the other meta stuff. Whereas like one that I actually agree with a lot of people leaving up pretty often is the Huhi Aurelion Sol example, where like he has a really good win rate on that. It goes off, but people don't ban it. Even in the series that they lost to it against in game 1, they left it up game 2, and Huhi just didn't pick it because he's still going to perform reasonably well on other champions. Like, just because you ban Aurelion Sol doesn't mean you get a free win. And CLG only takes Aurelion Sol when they feel like it's a really good time for them for some reason. They don't default to it like a Lee Sin, apparently, for Sven. So I think for some teams, you kind of do have to just let them get that comfort thing sometimes, because it's not worth devoting the draft resources to get rid of like that one threat that guy plays all the time, because he'll just pick something else that's fine. Like, that's kind of how I feel about Bjergsen and Syndra sometimes too. Not right now, because Syndra's super meta and strong.
I mean, I do think that if like Lee Sin is meta and this is the Svenskeren is just super good at it, it's like maybe it's arguable that you want to, in a region like NA or Europe or China, you want to play against teams when they're at their best for the best quality of competition, if you're really thinking about competing internationally, which was like kind of Travis's point. So I kind of get that, especially in regular season. Yeah, I just feel like if it's not like this ridiculously out of balance thing, or if you don't really need the win, it's okay to make drafting hubris, quote unquote.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like you kind of have this 2 checkmark system where it's like, all right, is this, you know, something that they're particularly good at, like Bjergsen and Syndra, and also does it make sense to ban it underneath normal circumstances because it's super OP? Then you have a pretty good argument, because you're going to ban OP stuff normally at Worlds or at international competition. But if you're just like, oh, this guy's pretty good at it, it's really a struggle, maybe you just keep it up unless you really need the win.
Well, I think also the third checkbox to look at is kind of like how much does it actually influence his champion pool? Because like right now, Lee seems to heavily influence his champion pool, where that might not be the case for Bjergsen.
Yeah, but you don't want him to learn any of these other champions. Keep him on that one thing so that he's weak and vulnerable, and then you ban it when you need it.
80% more
the
games than
snake
scrims.
gaming method from
this was like 2015. People just didn't ban Snake's comps. Like, they ran like 2 types of comps because their jungler had like 2 champions and their mid had like 1 champion, and it was just so people just let them keep playing them. And then playoffs came, it was like, first ban for these champions.
See?
So it was like, what do we do now?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
I can see that working, like you guys said, in the regular season.
Teams are lulling TSM into a false sense of security.
Yes, that's the whole
and then
point.
They're just going to be like, bam.
Don't force them to learn anything else until it's too late for him to learn anything else, you know?
I mean, if you look at it, it's much harder for TSM to learn how to play other things than you to learn how to type in Lee in the client and then ban it. So if one of the 2 teams needs to adapt, it's much easier on the team that just needs to ban that shit.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is just, you know, it's the example of the 3D chess that you see in NALCS that you don't really see in any other league. You know, people are just they're not thinking about this game, much like what TSM keeps saying. They're not thinking about this game or this match. They're thinking about the one that they're going to face against SKT in the finals at Worlds.
Love it.
Okay, let's move on. So we also have how long before we write off G2, says Kelsey.
Yeah, so this is actually something that we talked about in power rankings. So
you're really selling me on this. This was just
discussions.
Yeah, little.
No. I think it's a really valid question because everyone's kind of like, well, G2 have been really good for the past year and a half, right? They've won LCS consistently, and then, well, after that, so of course they'll catch up. Of course they'll figure it out. Then
what is their current standing, or how
they started out? Their standing isn't bad. It's a little weird because we just started cross conference. But they've lost to Misfits, they've lost to UOL, they've lost to Fnatic. Let's see if I can.
But they had that weird start. They're 2 and 3.
Third,
but it's
in their group.
They had the weird start. Yeah, they're third in their group. They had the weird start, but the thing is that some of the stuff that you see them doing poorly, right, is stuff that you aren't really sure that they can solve. Like, for example, right now you have the top lane interaction being really emphasized, where you have like really definitive pushing champions, and then these are usually easy gank opportunities for the enemy jungler early on, and a lot of junglers are pathing that way, and then like Expect just like isn't setting that up, or his map awareness when they're doing like 131 or 1-4, and then Expect will just have very low pressure in a side lane, and then people, or the other half of the map will have really low pressure, and then Expect will be pushed out or something like this, and they're not like coordinating their lanes well. A lot of times they're willing to give up objectives just to give Sven farm, which is like something that they've theoretically done in the past. Like they will give up multiple first-tier turrets so that Sven can have extra time in a low-pressure lane to farm his Twitch versus Kog'Maw, which occasionally works for them. Like it's worked for them when he's played Twitch, because Twitch is like super strong. It can do pick comps, it can do a bunch of different things, but not necessarily the Kog'Maw. And And Trick is not really good at taking advantage of pushing lane scenarios, in my opinion. Like, he doesn't really pressure invades well or deny the enemy jungler. Like, what he's doing with tempo advantages is basically just ganking mid. And it's not always successful because it's somewhat predictable and things like this. So I feel like G2 are having a lot of problems that are either related to the meta, also like the more playmaking style supports are coming back out, and this used to be a strength for Mithy, but I think Mithy is kind of faltering a little in terms of mechanical form and stuff like this. So like there either are meta related concerns for G2, or it just feels like stuff that they've always had that are becoming more relevant now. And so the question is, like, do we start condemning them? Are we still waiting for them to get it together? Like, have G2 as an organization commanded enough confidence for us to put them in the same category as TSM? These types of questions.
Well, it sounds really similar to like the CLG problem last year, right? Where like they went to MSI, they had a great run, really respectable, come out a little slow, and everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, it's like the hangover a little bit. They had to play a lot more. They're going to be tired. And then they supposed to figure stuff out, but CLG never really figured stuff out in Summer Split.
Well, and G2 went on a vacation.
But
the weird start at the beginning.
Their Koreans went on a vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
Perks was sick. It was a Korean vacation.
Yeah, I called in sick sometimes at Yahoo.
I mean, Perks was sick, so they had 3 subs. But that was the first week, and then the second week you could use that excuse because maybe they didn't have that much scrim time.
Well, yeah, but the question is, like, how long can you... Sorry.
Third week and fourth week. And we're seeing TSM kind of pick up in form, but it just feels like G2 just aren't getting it.
Yeah, but what
They're
if
just fundamentally not getting it.
What if you're always a little behind everybody else if you miss that first week? And like the associated, like they kind of
double-lift argument.
You could argue that they compounded.
Korea's always going to be a year behind.
You could argue. Yeah. I get it. People need to go back and watch that video.
That people increase at the same rate, which just like isn't true.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
yeah.
G2 themselves said that like because people have already figured it out and we'll be playing against people who have already figured it out, we should theoretically be able to catch up.
Theoretically. But what if you compound... Okay, so there's an MSI handicap when you go to MSI. I think most people would agree with that. And then you come back, and then you also miss like the beginning of the split. So what if... Yes, maybe you can gain on people. Maybe you're a good team, so you can like catch up to them, or you can look at what other people are doing. But what if you still need to like spend time catching up, and so it's going to take a little bit for them to get there?
I just fundamentally don't think that that's actually what happens in League of Legends, especially with a team that didn't change out any roster members. Like, there's no reason that like suddenly you guys don't work together on like, oh, well, we need to build our own team up because we don't understand how we function as a team. Like, who's supposed to be making this call? Who's supposed to be making that call, right? Like, you need to get back in the groove of doing that, but like you at least have some basis that should exist.
Yeah, but do we think that's what G2's problems are? Is that it's just like a team synergy thing, or is it just like an understanding of the game? Because if it's an understanding of the game, then that's the issue, right?
Well, yeah, that's what Kelsey was saying more, right?
I'm thinking it's more just like the problems, the flaws that they have are being particularly emphasized since the mid-season change, I think. Like some of the top lane stuff with the way the top lane meta is trending and how you use top lane advantages, and then like the fact that Perks isn't like, I mean, there's more jungle like this has been a problem for Trick, is that there's more jungle tempo space outside of just farming. And that was something he was always good at, was like optimizing his farm last split and things like this, or last year. And now that that's changed, he's struggled more this year in general.
Yeah.
And it just keeps kind of compounding and stuff like this.
Emily?
So, my counterpoint to, or like a slight counterpoint to what Mark was saying actually, is that like, I remember talking to CLG at the beginning of spring when everyone, even though they faltered at Worlds, a lot of people were like, well, they stuck with the same roster. You shouldn't have to relearn all of that communication and stuff. They will come out of the gate and they'll look strong because they'll be able to communicate, and then maybe they'll fall off later in the season. That was kind of the outlook that people had on CLG going into this past spring split. And I know talking to a lot of the team members, they said that, sure, we still communicate and we think it's a strength that we can we know each other so well that you see someone, make a mistake and you get really mad at them, but like it blows over very, very quickly because everyone knows that, you're all here trying to win. And that's obviously a strength. But when the meta shifts enough that you then have to adjust to that, I know, members of CLG came out repeatedly and said, like, we're having trouble with, Darshan adjusting to being the primary initiator because it used to be Aframu, or it used to be, like, Huhi and Aframu combination. So I think that if the meta shifts enough for players to have to take on a different role within the team, regardless of whether you haven't changed your roster, regardless of whether you've had a core of a team that's been together and they know how to communicate and they know how to problem solve, I still think that can definitely throw a wrench into your plans. And I think that could be something that's happening to G2 if they at all have to adjust to different roles.
Right, but that's more meta related, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like, so like the point that Travis was pushing or like talking about was like, oh, we fell behind the other teams and we need to figure it out. And it's like, no, your team doesn't function well when each player now needs to play differently. And that's why I mean, like, I don't think it's like, oh, we're going to catch up and figure it out. It's like, this is something your team will struggle with, not like you took too much time off or this or that. It's like a fundamental team struggle. Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
So, I mean, that I guess that was my point. Like, I think I see G2 now in a similar situation where they might be in a meta where the way they've been playing previously isn't going to necessarily work.
So the question was, how long before we write off G2? Kelsey, are you ready to write off G2?
I think... Unless something changes that swings them back into favor, I think we kind of have to have lower expectations for G2, at least a little bit at this point, and say they don't look like they're going to win the split. So,
Mark or Emily?
I admittedly have not watched a ton of G2, but if the problems are, as Kelsey says, where it's less about like, oh, I just don't play Galio well, I need to figure out how to actually play Galio mid, and more about like they play with waves improperly, like Sven's not where he should be, or he's out farming, that kind of stuff that you're saying. Like that's a more fundamental issue than meta. We got to figure out how the meta works right now in terms of champions.
For me, I think it's difficult because previously you could just kind of sit back and be like, G2 are definitely better than the rest of Europe. I don't think you can say that anymore. I think it's telling that their losses, like Misfits are kind of rising up a bit. And then their other losses were to top teams. So I think what it is that they've just shifted slightly down to a point where, like Kelsey said, they're not at that level where you just look at them and they're like, oh, default Kings of Europe. Like now they have serious competition.
Yeah. Very good. All right.
And maybe this is an addendum for next week rather than this week, but it's an interesting question as to whether or not that means like the rest of Europe got stronger or G2 are just worse. So
well, we'll find out at Rift
hopefully they
Rivals.
lose again and we can talk about it.
All right, what do a region's worst say about the strength of the whole, featuring MVP, which is it'll be interesting because this will tie into Mark's topic in a second as well. So, Emily, this is a interesting philosophical question.
Yeah, so it's kind of what does your region's worst team say about you? And this actually came from the conversation that Kelsey and I were having about the worst teams that China and Korea are sending to Rift Rivals. And I was watching this series between MVP and the Rocks Tigers, and it was really bad. Neither team knew how to set up for Baron. It's been this huge thing where Beyond has looked really lost in trying to communicate with his lanes. For some reason, like that was MVP's thing. I know we've talked about them, so just a shortcut if you don't remember or you haven't watched them. Like their thing was kind of they, as a unit, were greater than individual some of their parts, and they had some weak members, and they, improved enough that they were in playoffs, and now they're the worst, or one of the worst teams in Korea. So I guess we always talk about like Korea as a region. I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, they're default the best region. There's this famous, or I don't know how famous it is, but it's funny to me, but where there's kind of this Korean netizen saying where like, we're so good we can beat you with our Jenners, which I guess doesn't really work because Jenner are doing fairly well right now. But our
worst are better than your best.
Yeah, the idea is that like our worst team is still gonna beat your best team, which I actually wanted to say about Korea that I don't think that's true, because watching that MVP Rocks series was not good. Like
traumatic.
Neither team knew what to do. And it was bad, and I knew it was going to be bad going in, but I still watched it. And it just, I don't see MVP doing well at Rift Rivals. I don't think this is going to be one of those scenarios where, obviously, you're also sending SKT and KT, which are two significantly better teams. One of which is the best team in the world. So, but I do think that there's a lot to be said for looking at how, like, the strength of the region as a whole, and what MVP tells me is that no, like, I don't think they're going to go and be able to perform particularly well on an international stage unless some sort of weird, dramatic change happens within the team during the next week.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a weird situation because in the past you didn't really worry about these types of questions because the strength of the team is always just kind of shown at Worlds, where you have presumably the top 3 teams from that region there. Now we have Rift Rivals, which is turning more and more into just a really weird event where you're going to have perhaps very bad teams there competing against very good teams. It's just bizarre. So, I mean, generally speaking, I think your question was, what do regions worst say about the strength of the whole? And I think under normal circumstances they say nothing, because you don't ever think about them, because they're not relevant to the conversation about a region's strength, because the only time you really worry about region strength is at Worlds or MSI. Now you're kind of like, maybe they say something, because, you know, if the worst team in Europe beats North America, like, that's a big deal. It's just weird.
I think you kind of obviously have to look at it within context. So, like, speaking about North America last split, when we were like, oh, look at all this parity, the bottom teams actually, like, look reasonable to a degree. Like, Envy takes everyone to 3 games. I think if you saw a Rift Rival situation with, for, like, let's say some reason they went and they challenged other top teams and did the same thing, I think you would be like, oh, wow. You know, what's true about Envy is probably that, like, all of NA is reasonably strong, because they're all kind of playing Envy and beating them but struggling. And I think it's, like you said, it's usually a case where you can't even try and make those kind of assumptions because you never see them anywhere else but their own region. But a lot of times, too, I feel like a really bad team just sucks. Like Old Coast or like Origin last split, like those kinds of things just are not very indicative of the region as a whole, and it's about like that team just sucked.
Like Snake Esports.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's... Yeah, actually, in China, there is this slight counter that I would bring up, which is I actually don't think Snake are the worst team in China. I think it's...
Nice.
You're like crying as you say that.
I think
okay?
it's Jingdong, which is really interesting because Jingdong are actually driving a lot of strategic change in China. And it's weird because what they're doing is they're doing it wrong. Just like fundamentally, but they basically lane swap at 8 to 10 minutes, like regardless of circumstances or situation. Like usually you lane swap because of teleport advantage, or your top has a huge lead and your bot is suffering, which I think works for Jingdong generally, but then they like misplay the swap or something like this. And then I think a lot of teams are just doing it now because they want to have their duo lane top when Rift Herald spawns. And this is becoming like an LPL thing, and it's leading to a lot of misallocation of farm, like AD carries getting sent really, really poorly far behind. And I would say Jingdong started it because Jingdong have been experimenting with lane swaps to compensate for their bottom lane all year when they were QG. And so to me, that's an interesting situation. And I think you can have like really bad teams try to kind of have an influence on the meta with like weird gimmicks or strategic things, because like maybe their players aren't very good, but they can come up with an idea that gets them some wins or things like this. Like I think Lyra, for example, had an impact on the way the jungle was played in North America. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. All right, anything more on this topic? Which I don't know if we really completed, but I don't know if we have a really good answer for what do regions worst say about the strength of the whole. All right, moving on to a sort of similar question, which is about teams that suck. Do any bottom half teams break into the top half? And I guess you're asking about within the context of NALCS this split, right, Mark?
Yeah, that would be it.
Okay, so who are the bottom half teams right now? I'm trying to pull it up.
Envy, P1, TL,
FlyQuest,
Echo Fox, FlyQuest.
Yeah.
So of those 5 teams, do any of them bump out the current top 5, which is, you know, Dig, C9, CLG, TSM, Immortals? Because for me, I think it's pretty set in stone, and like the only one you're looking at is like potentially like Envy and Dignitas. But other than that, I feel like the top 4, top 5 are pretty clearly a step above. And like Echo Fox, I think like their late game decision making is like fundamentally flawed. It has been for a long time, and I doubt it will get fixed in the middle of a season randomly. And a lot of the teams have something like that where you can be like, this is a fatal flaw within the team that I don't know how they fix. So I don't know how you guys feel, but I really feel like Envy is the only team who can kind of like figure it out to the level that they can make a push in playoffs and maybe like upset someone.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, with Envy, you can kind of see the wheels turning. I think it's going to depend on what they end up doing with their mid lane position and how that affects the team. Because obviously this past week was the first week that we saw Niski over Pyrian. And it was a little bit different. Echo Fox is really frustrating because they have like the tools to win games and then they just don't.
Yeah.
They're watching their series against TSM was legitimately one of the more frustrating series of the past weekend.
I feel like Emily just always has like that one NALCS series from the weekend that she mentions where she's just like, oh,
I mean,
could have done it and they didn't, and it's just
Yeah, it's especially for Echo Fox is like you have a good early game jungler, a really strong mid laner, your top laner can do some things, and your bot lane, as long as they're stable, they're fine. But it's like it just never comes together despite the leads that they get.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like you said, I don't really see that changing. So Echo Fox to me are like the most frustrating team in this lineup of bottom teams in NA. And then Team Liquid, Phoenix, One, and FlyQuest, it's really difficult to see them doing anything to get out of that position.
I think it's interesting how there usually is like a top, 3 to 5 or whatever in a region, and then a
top half,
really
bottom half.
Dramatic drop off.
Yep, that's
Just,
always
really
been the case
dramatic.
throughout all of NALCS histories. You have top half,
And
bottom
it's
half.
not just NALCS. Like I think it's true in most regions as well. And I don't know if it's just that like do you reach a point where you're using up all of the talent, or is it you're using up all of the infrastructural talent? Is it a point where there's a cool kids club? I don't know.
It does feel
They all meet behind the LCS and they're like, okay.
Yeah, it's like,
What
okay,
losers
it's
aren't
all
allowed in
just
the
one
club.
giant collusion. They're all throwing to each other to make sure that they can stay above the rest. It's
it feels
or
like
just scrim setups or anything like that. Yeah.
it feels like the gap is basically like the teams above them don't have like this one thing that like they just can't overcome. So like, NV struggles, they win, they lose based off comp, how they played that game, these kinds of things, where some teams like Echo Fox just can't win because they don't know what the hell to do with a lead. And like TL just they just don't have any like idea what they're trying to do at all. FlyQuest just wants to play super, super aggro, but they're mechanically like not up to snuff, and it's like they have to just become mechanically way better if they want to play that skirmish heavy or whatever. It feels like for most like the bottom teams, there's like this thing that they can't fix without roster changes or like a new season coming in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to make a prediction, which is that Dig drops out of the top 5, and that either Envy or Echo Fox pop up. Only because in the same way that I will never bet against, like a Cloud9 or a TSM, I will never bet for Dignitas, or I will always bet against Dignitas. They have seemed like, since re-entering under, like, taking over this other brand and 76ers coming in, I still feel like this is the same Dignitas we've known.
Not bad, whole
for
new
so, like,
team.
yeah, it's like, I don't know what the secret sauce was that made you guys this way, that has somehow, like, survived through this weird new transition, but you're still Dignitas. So I predicted Dignitas to drop somehow, something weird happens or whatever. And it's hard for me too, because like, I referenced this earlier and then Emily shut me down as she so often does, but I do think that at some point in time CLG is just going to implode, but I don't think it will be like, they will probably be okay long for just a couple more weeks so that they stay in the top 5, even if they like bust her out at the end or something, or they look terrible in playoffs. So I don't know. I think Dig will drop. I think CLG will stay, but that they'll have dramatic drops before the end of the split. So, all right. Other than that, it's time for questions from the chat. All right. Woot 12345 says, "Why did Kelsey sell out and put UOL below IMT on power rankings?"
I mean, first of all, I already expressed this, I think, a little bit, because I think Immortals, if I looked at all of the Western/Chinese teams this week, I think Immortals played the best, and that's like a week-to-week thing. I think that the G2 versus UOL series inspired basically zero confidence in me. The Fnatic versus Mysterious Monkeys has inspired very little confidence in Fnatic. I feel like right now the problem with European teams is that they all have like a gimmick. Okay? And it's really frustrating because it's like their gimmick isn't necessarily champion pools or things of that nature. They have, like with Unicorns of Love, they suddenly see an opening in the middle of the game because someone dropped pressure on a side of the map, and then they all group mid and they team fight you and you lose, and this is how they win a game. Fnatic, they will play these very deliberate pick style compositions with a side laning AD carry. And if they don't get these specific like pick setups or things like this, I feel these specific pick setups, then they also default to this weird team fighting protect reckless thing, and it's just it's extremely defined, extremely one-dimensional, and Immortals showed slightly more depth than I expected from them, so I think this week they deserve the spot. Maybe next week they drop down.
Pelon21S asks, is Apollo carrying Envy harder than Lyra this split?
Ooh.
That's an interesting question because my gut reaction is no. But Lyra hasn't been super impressive, and like the whole team has stepped up for a large degree, and Apollo probably the most. And it's just, has he overtaken Lyra? I don't know. I'd have to think about it for a second.
All right.
I still think, I still think Lyra does more for the team, even if it's not as visibly obvious, but that also could be due to the nature of his position because he's a jungler. I think Apollo has had a career split thus far.
Yeah.
I've actually been really impressed with how much he's stepped up. So I hope that he continues. I think it's also that, if anything, Envy right now seems to me like a team where they're actually not just looking for Lyra to carry, or they're not just looking for like one thing to let them win. They're actually really trying to focus on playing as a team and playing through your AD carry currently, especially when he's playing so well, is a really good strategy for Envy. So I think it's some of that as well. Like, it seems like they've settled on that that's the best way that they should play right now. And actually, I think that's really good for the team because last year it was kind of, will Ninja int and can Lyra carry hard enough? And that's not that team anymore. Like, they seem a lot more like an actual unit, which is good.
What's weird is, though, I think playing around like their bot lane was actually super good for the team. Like, with Niski coming in, it feels like he's not as much that kind of player where, like, he plays Cassio and, like, wants more resources than Pyrion did, where he, like, just took Talia and Ahri and kind of roamed around with Lyra. So that's kind of one of the reasons that I think Envy, I wouldn't say, like, took a step back this week, but they're clearly a different style team this week.
I actually didn't watch Envy's games this week very much. Did they... Niski's Orianna is traditionally pretty bad. Did he play?
He played a bunch of Cassio. He played one Talia game, which he actually roamed well on, and it was the one time that he did roam well. And then I don't remember what else he played, but it was a very different champion pool than Pyrion, with Talia, that one Talia game being the similar thing.
I mean, he plays a lot differently than Pyrion too, and I don't know if it's because of the way that Lyra and Pyrion communicate, because Lyra had said he was a little bit worried about Pyrion going into the split, and he kind of took him under his wing, and the end result was that Pyrion, regardless of what you think of him as a laner, was really great at setting up for Lyra specifically. Like, kind of always being ahead of the jungler, getting the first rotation on some of those roams from mid, setting up vision for Lyra, stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where they go, but I think playing through Apollo more, it has been a smart move for them.
All right. I like this question a lot. Just Casual says, what's the story this year you are hoping to actually happen? So anything
I know
in
immediately.
LCS, EU, LCS Worlds, like what is the story that, League of Legends story that you'd like to see happen? Emily, you said
I know mine.
KT Rolster finally wins a Korean title for Score.
Okay.
It's more about score than KT, right?
He's been to so many finals. He has not won anything. Ugh.
I would say the Korean upset. Just someone beats them at Worlds. I don't care. NA, EU,
Beats
China.
them in finals, you're saying, like Korea does not win.
Yeah, like they don't win Worlds.
Okay.
Would be like, I think that's cool for the sport after having us been railed on generally by Korea for so long.
Kelsey?
Storyline I would like to see happen. I would like to see an all-Chinese team not implode for internal reasons.
Well, my story would be... What? You guys are just still snickering about the China joke?
I'm just...
No,
I'm
I'm just
really sad about Royal. I just... okay, let's go.
After being let go from Yahoo, Travis Gafford rises above and beyond anyone's expectations to run the greatest esports team or company or organization.
You
or
don't even know what
ever.
you want, dude. I was waiting to be like, are you going to become a player? What do you mean you're rising up?
Like it's just people think I'm done. Peter was making jokes about how I'm going to be homeless.
Literally have heard no one say that, so I think it's just Peter.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, the thing though is, if you want to make the greatest comeback, you need to fall further down because, like, this isn't very far to be honest. Like, you need to actually become homeless and like develop a crack addiction.
Okay.
And then beat all of that.
Okay.
To make it a really good comeback story.
Okay.
Get on that, Travis.
I will get on that. Thank you. All right. Mike Spam says, Travis, I think you're confused. People hope you're done. They don't think you're done.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
Should get this guy on the show. He claims Travis better than the rest of us.
One more question. Okay. Well, I kind of already addressed this and answered this question, but just because he had a funny joke, we'll ask Mike Spam's question. How confident are we that Dig won't have a massive upward or downward swing between now and playoffs? I'm confident they'll have a downward swing. How confident are all of you in Dig and them doing something dramatic, one way or the other?
I wouldn't even necessarily call it like a big downward swing. I think like right now they're very inconsistent with it basically being like, how well does Shrimp do early game? And then can we let Someday carry us? Or do we get a good mid-game Baron call? And if like two of those three things don't happen, they lose. They need two of those three basically to happen, I think. And that's a little scary considering like a lot of other teams do more, I think. So I'm not even sure necessarily it's a downward trend so much as like, oh, Envy figured it out and now they're ahead of Dignitas. Or maybe they do trend downwards a little bit, like Shrimp starts just straight playing bad and feeding because he is that kind of volatile player. But I don't think that there's clearly something that's going to go horribly wrong with this team the way like we're thinking maybe CLG explodes or something.
I mean, that's kind of the case with like a lot of kind of mediocre, almost there teams in NA. Like, I don't know, we kind of talked about the bottom teams not being able to fix their problems. So I feel like the middle of NA are always these really inconsistent teams that will have like, and not even just North America, like any region. Like you look at Korea right now and it's Afrika, Jenner, and Longzhu, and kind of in the middle, and all of them have these really like sometimes inconsistent showings. So it's always really hard for me to call. I don't know. I don't see Dignitas having like a massive upward swing, but I also don't see them having a massive downward swing either. Like I think they're just gonna stay kind of a mediocre, inconsistent team, and unless they, I don't know. I don't even know what would have to happen in order for them. I guess other teams around them would have to move.
Diablo CG will ask actually the final question. Will you and Mark be going to summer finals? Me and Mark. So Mark, explain to me what happened this weekend on the broadcast. Friday, I think it was Friday that they posted the...
It was a Saturday.
Oh, Saturday? Like, hashtag take Mark or hashtag leave Mark? Was that real?
Yep.
Were you always going... Like, was that actually going to decide it? Or did they tell you what was happening? I missed the part where they brought it up on podcast.
It was just super troll. It was just in rehearsal. So, like, for LCS, what happens is, like, we get there at 9 a.m., we go through read-through,
yeah, you
we
guys
do a
script
rehearsal.
everything. It's all scripted, yeah.
Yeah, everything's scripted. We get the players in there, they practice the games to make sure they execute them properly, like wrestling.
Yeah.
But one of the things in rehearsal is, like, we usually joke around a lot more. And so, like, Dash does his, like, read-through about how there's a promotion going on for the tickets for Boston. And then he turned to me just kind of conversationally, like, you're from Boston, right? And I was like, yep. And he's like, are you going? And I was like, I don't know. You guys tell me. Usually you hire me to go. I don't choose to go. And then he's like, well, let's ask the fans. Maybe they'll decide. And then they actually made, like, a hashtag and, like, a poll and a graphic.
Did they tell you that
stuff.
they were going to do that on the broadcast?
Yeah, they were like, oh, yeah, let's actually do that. That sounds funny. And then, like, at no point were we like, hey, by the way, Mark, if this goes well, we will actually bring you, or if it goes badly, we actually won't.
So,
like, we
so
never
maybe
talked about, no consequences were ever discussed.
So you were for all you know, you're like, this was a
joke?
joke, but maybe this was like they were like, we really need a way to tell if whether or not Mark is bringing real value to the finals. Like
that's what I thought. I was like, it's like a haha, this is funny, but like seriously, let's take a poll on how popular Mark is.
Yeah. That's too good. So is it confirmed you get to go now? I assume you have to go.
No, that's what I said. There's been zero talk of actual consequences.
Okay, so at some point in time, somebody who's actually in charge of the broadcast might be like, oh, no, we were never going to take Mark. We don't have that in the budget.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
It's interesting to hear. That's how Riot's running the broadcast these days. That's how.
Hey, it was a funny joke. It got people online, and then it's like, whoa, I guess we're bringing Mark. I'm sure it's not the end of the world for them if they have to bring me.
As far as me going to Boston, I feel like the chances aren't great right now. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have something by that point in time. And while I do appreciate the tips and stuff that have been hitting my support page, I will say that it's definitely instructed me that I probably can't go the Patreon or Kickstarter route because I would need a significant increase or multiplier effect for this to actually be like a real source of income. So I think, Mark, you've experienced that before with Blame Game and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice, like, addition.
Yeah.
So, like, right now, my Patreon gets me, like, I don't care about talking numbers, gets me around 200, 300, which, like, yeah, that's nice. I really appreciate that, but that's not a livable income at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's around what I've been seeing, too. It's so, like, the cost of flying to Boston and going to the hotel or doing a hotel thing and all that shit is complicated. So maybe I'll have something or I'll freelance or something by then. I don't know. But I feel like there's a pretty good chance I don't go to Boston for finals. But that's okay because I can finally sit. You're going? All right. Well,
because I can stay at my parents' house for free.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I literally just walk
Can I stay at your parents'
street.
house for free? Is that not an
Probably.
option, Emily?
Maybe.
I mean,
I guess I could ask them.
My former
They're
boss.
weird people. Anyway, but yeah, I just walk down. The train station's right there, and I take the train to Boston, and it's super easy and cheap.
Yeah.
So.
I have the benefit right now of not having a permanent address, so it's an interesting situation. Which means that
Wait, so you're actually the homeless one. We're talking about...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
actually the homeless one.
Yeah, all right. Well, anyway, I just wish it was like in Seattle or something because that's cheaper. I think that's it. So it's time for Emily Rand's Anime Pick of the Week.
Oh, crap.
Anime Expo is this weekend in Los Angeles.
It is.
Emily will be going there. This is the special Anime Expo edition of Emily Rand's Anime Pick of the Week.
My pick has nothing to do with Anime Expo. It's actually super old. So,
There might be cosplayers.
And I thought, so I'm trying to think, because like the way to watch this legally is to, I can't remember whether it's streaming or anywhere, but the DVDs are out somewhere, so I don't know.
Okay, it's available.
It is available legally, yes. So, which is my only like that's my like technicality, right? But it is an OVA movie kind of thing called Macross Plus. It's super old. but it is absolutely gorgeous. And if you want to see fighter planes and a kind of like rote love story, but just in general, like some really amazing animation, and a really amazing like soundtrack and sound direction, go watch Macross Plus because it's just really fun. And yeah, I don't know. I just like seeing like very technically advanced animation, and this is like one of the more beautiful things I've seen from anime in general. So,
what is it about though?
It is about
Fighter planes and romance.
fighter. Yeah, it's like fighter pilots basically.
Okay.
And there's an idol that's trying to kill everyone.
There's a what that's trying to kill everybody?
An idol.
An idol.
Like
Like
I
a
think I'm seeing
like
a trend with like a pop star. I think I'm seeing a trend with Emily's anime picks is that she doesn't really care what they're about as much as that they're pretty. Yeah.
Yes. I like good visual storytelling.
This
Okay.
is just Top Gun, right?
Kind of, yeah. Actually, that's what I was gonna say. It's kind of like Top Gun, but anime.
Sold.
All right, if we can't get this show or this segment of the show sponsored by Crunchyroll, should I explore getting this segment of the show sponsored by Faku?
No. No.
I don't know what that is.
So Faku is like...
I don't either.
So, okay, I did not know what it was until 2 Anime Expos ago when I was walking around Anime Expo. Because I go for, I get a media badge and I look at the esports stuff.
You go because you like anime. Great.
I don't watch anime. I don't even know.
You don't need to justify being there, dude. No one's gonna be like, "You went to Anime Expo and I'm watching an online broadcast about League of Legends." Like,
I'm just explaining the context as someone who said he doesn't watch anime.
You don't need to explain the
why
context.
I would go there. Anyway,
You're just being defensive.
so I went there 2 years ago, and I was walking past this like closed off booth, and there's a line of people like waiting to go in, and this woman that was like helping the line go in or whatever, monitoring people coming in, walks up to me and is like, "Hey, Travis, you're Travis, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Hey, my boyfriend will really want to meet you because he's a big League fan or whatever." I was like, "Okay." And so she brings me behind the curtain or whatever into this booth that's labeled Faku, and I look around and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So in that moment, I guess I learned that it's a Western. I guess hentai is the name of like that type of like porn anime, right? So it's like a Western hentai company. But from what I can tell of my limited knowledge of anime, they've sort of styled themselves as like, you know how Playboy is kind of like a cool brand, like people wear like Playboy hats or whatever. People wear like Faku hats and stuff. It's like they've somehow made it into like a cool brand within the anime space. That's the impression I have. Emily's making a face right now.
That's an interesting impression.
Are they not a cool brand? Be careful here. We're trying to get a sponsorship.
It sounds like an Austin Powers joke. Like, fuck
they
you, fuck me,
they
but
do
fuck you.
them, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But they're like, I've just seen their name all over Anime Expo, and people wear hats and all this stuff. So anyway, that's my experience there. Oh, and the owner is very, very nice guy who's a big fan of League of Legends stuff, and last year he met Doublelift Hanser and Biofrost and gave Biofrost a jacket that was some hentai reference, and it was hilarious. Anyway, that's
Are we good here?
Yeah, Mark.
Can I get on with my day?
Melee moment.
I haven't eaten yet today. There's not really a melee moment. I think the only thing that happened was DreamHack. Armada 1 fucked people up at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, that was the melee moment.
Go Google. Did he just walk up slowly and down smash? There's your melee moment.
Did he just walk up slowly and down smash? Okay.
Yep.
Kelsey, you have any shout-outs, plugs, anything you want to say at the end of this?
This is the last time I'll be coming to you from Shanghai.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
Are you going to be in Europe the next time we talk?
I'm going to be in Berlin next time, so yeah.
Okay. Well, looking forward to it. Hopefully you have good internet.
Yeah, hopefully my internet isn't terrible.
Yeah.
It's good.
Emily?
I like Travis said, I'll be at Anime Expo this week. I'll also be at LCS. It's going to be an interesting week because I have to do a bunch of freelance stuff at LCS. But yeah, so I'm freelancing at a bunch of different places, 2 of which have been announced. One of which I think will be announced today, ? So maybe I'll find out about that. And yeah, I don't know, just I guess if you are at all interested in anything I write, following me on Twitter right now is probably the best way to go, which is just at League of Emily.
Mark?
I'm MarkZ, at the MarkZ on Twitter. I'll be putting out the Blame Game tomorrow or Thursday. I also cast NACS and the analyst. I don't know.
Are you? All right, and there's Mark Zimmerman. For me, I've got some more stuff coming to YouTube this weekend or this week, including some stuff that I can't talk about yet. But also, Ovely's got interviews going up. They're great. They're super fun. I did a video with her at LCS this week, which was actually surprisingly, I think, only the second time we'd ever released a video together. So that's really cool. And then, yeah, it's just figuring out what's next in my life. So thanks, everyone, for watching. This has been League Weekly. Hopefully we will be back next Monday. Maybe it'll be Tuesday. Who knows? We'll see how Kelsey's internet is. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, it'll be fun. All right.